From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. The presidents of the United States, Turkey, and South Africa will be among the first speakers at the United Nations General Assembly. Kicking off with his speech at 9 a.m. New York time, President Donald Trump is expected to discuss his efforts to reach a denuclearization deal with North Korea. He's also expected to call on other nations to isolate Iran. Meanwhile, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, is set to focus on the long-standing Syrian crisis, especially in the province of Idlib. And lastly, this will be the first assembly for the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's likely to talk about land reform and the country's plans for economic recovery. And before his speech on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans for a second summit with North Korea.
A lot of very positive things are happening with Chairman Kim of North Korea, and you'll be hearing about that over the coming weeks. But I think some really, really important things are happening. As I said just a little while ago, we have an agreement to work out another summit, and we look forward to doing that. I'm going to be meeting with Chairman Kim in the not-too-distant future.
According to the European Union's representative for Foreign Affairs, Federica Mogherini, the Iranian nuclear deal is in everyone's best interest. Here's what she had to say.
I think the full implementation of the nuclear deal is in the interest of all, including Iran, and this is why I believe Iran has good arguments and good reasons to remain in the agreement. It's an open-ended decision to be taken. Obviously, the more operational decisions we'll manage to take and different countries implement, I believe the more Iran will have reasons to do that. But the fact that we are still here, being able to say that the deal is still fully implemented, as the IAEA has done less than a month ago, is something that is encouraging.
The president of the General Assembly of the United Nations is Maria Fernanda Espinosa. She is the fourth woman, but the first from Latin America and the Caribbean to preside over the assembly. She spoke exclusively to Telesur about the future challenges of the organization.
We all need to make an effort to bring the United Nations work closer to the people. That means answering people's problems in the best way possible. We need to build a more efficient organization which has better reactions and adapts to the times. I think it is important that all world leaders make it clear that the only way to solve global problems, such as climate change, disease and war, is through coordinated multilateral actions. To do that, a strong global leadership is needed.
Venezuela's foreign minister has warned that a number of countries will try to raise the issue of Venezuela at the United Nations to distract from their own problems. Jorge Ariasa was speaking outside the UN headquarters in New York.
Get ready to see how the United States, Colombia, and countries of the Lima cartel are going to use the topic of Venezuela here for everything. To hide the corruption scandals, the increase in narcotics production, their failures in the peace process, and their falling popularity at home. They'll use migration in Venezuela to try hide it all.
On Tuesday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro addressed the nation. Maduro congratulated his ministers on the progress made last month as part of Venezuela's economic recovery program. He also praised both the security services and the Venezuelan public for their role in uncovering the plans behind last month's failed assassination attempt. 3 of the persons involved were arrested over the weekend. President Maduro also condemned the persons behind his assassination attempt and confirmed that the perpetrators are associated with the country's far right.
Violent groups have been active since 2014, working on various coup attempts. We caught these terrorists red-handed under an investigation that started right after the assassination attempt against me. They have all confessed that they were working for members of the Venezuelan far right.
And in other news coming from Venezuela, according to the government, around 300 migrants have taken part in the Return to the Homeland plan. They've returned to Venezuela from Brazil, Ecuador, Colombia, and some other countries throughout the region. Migrants in Colombia shared with us the tough conditions they lived in.
Under the burning sun, or sometimes in cold weather, hundreds of Venezuelan migrants live on the streets in Colombia. Despite the announcement made by President Iván Duque to provide international help for the migrants, the aid has not arrived for many families.
We're surviving here, getting used to the weather. You see, it's normal now, but it's very cold. The other day it was hailing. The rain was very strong. I suggest Venezuelans not to come here.
Camps were built next to sewers, under bridges, without drinking water or any kind of medical care. They face threats of eviction as authorities blame them for invading public space.
They tell you, come, you can stay at my place, but then they tell you, no, you can't stay here any longer, you need to get a job. But that's very difficult, so we start looking for petty jobs, like selling cigars, candy, or even we get to begging.
On the streets of Colombia, they easily become victims of drug trafficking and violence and prostitution.
In the city center, you can invariably see drugs and prostitution.
All the families who came here after they were promised jobs thought Colombia would at least guarantee their basic rights.
I was robbed because I had some money that I couldn't change because they didn't help me with that after finding out I'm Venezuelan. They asked for my passport that I didn't have. I got robbed and I lost all my money and plane tickets.
This hard reality here has made many Venezuelans return to their country after registering to the Return to the Homeland plan.
I'm glad to see what they're doing for us. I'm happy to go back. I'd rather stay there because you can find some job, but here my children sleep in the street.
I'm
very happy, especially because I haven't seen my family in a long time.
They leave behind discrimination, labor exploitation, and poor living conditions. These families go back to their home from Colombia to meet with their relatives and dear ones.
A number of workers' unions in Argentina have united to protest against President Mauricio Macri's austerity measures. Thousands were out in force on the streets of Buenos Aires on Monday. They strongly opposed the government's emergency $50 billion rescue package from the International Monetary Fund. The deal hasn't gone down well with those who hold the organization responsible for the financial collapse nearly 17 years ago. Protesters believe the new deal will hurt people. Argentina's largest labor union, the CGT, have warned that if the labor strikes do not sway the government, it can expect growing protests. Now, a fresh 24-hour strike has been announced, which will see all flights in, out, and within the country grounded.
A 36-hour strike has rallied people here in the historic Plaza de Mayo. Exceeding all expectations in size, a very big convoy from the Central Workers Union are rejecting the economic politics that Mauricio Macri government is implementing, the IMF accord that is being signed in the United States, and in the defense of public education. Also, they are calling for a better health service and defending pensioners. All this is the opening of a 24-hour, even larger strike with the General Work Confederation that will see a halt to all public transport, including domestic and international flights. A truly overwhelming national shutdown against Mauricio Macri.
Queremos verdad, reparación integral, pero sobre todo justicia, pero justicia social.
How many ways there are to tell a story? The different perspectives of our nations are on Telesur documentaries. Sundays, only on Telesur.
We are always there tracking the news. We seek equality. We defend the truth. It's a hard job, but we are not alone. We count on a new ally.
Welcome back. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera announced a plan to end the conflict between the state and the indigenous people of the Araucanía region. The plan includes investments worth $1.6 million in the region. But the Mapuche people are demanding political participation and compensation for victims of state violence. They also consider the new plan an excuse for the militarization of their forests.
The fact of being indigenous people is something that fills us with pride. They enrich the culture and life of our country. For this reason, this constitutional reform seeks to protect the values and tradition of our people, also to recognize the contribution of our indigenous people made with the culture, language and customs. And it also obliged the state to preserve and promote that cultural diversity.
And members of the Mapuche community are expressing their concern about the multiple acts of police brutality and discrimination they're being forced to endure.
I think that before proposing the peace accord here in the locality, Sebastián Piñera should start by apologizing to all the Mapuche children because of the discrimination and repression they have suffered at the hands of the state.
The electoral campaign of the Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad continues. Haddad toured the southwest of Brazil, visiting former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva again on Monday. After campaigning activities in northeastern Brazil, the PT candidates made a visit to the former president in Curitiba to reiterate his support and solidarity. After meeting with him, Haddad said that his main objective is to work for the restructuring of democracy within the country. Haddad is expected to wrap up his day attending an event in defense of education, science and technology. So for more on the campaign, we go to our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Ignacio Limas.
According to Evope, the conservative candidate is still in the first stage with 28% of the vote intention. For Fernando Haddad, he has gone up 3 percentage points, now with 22%. Next is the center-left candidate with 11%. The trend is for Haddad to continue to rise in the polls. In the coming days, there will be protests by feminist groups against the Bolsonaro for his sexist and fascist behaviors.
A community in Honduras is resisting eviction from a gold mining country. Its concession includes the right to remove their loved ones from the local cemetery. Gilda Silvestrucci has the story.
Flores Mira Lopez went to visit her mother in the cemetery. She found employees of the mining company taking her mother's coffin to another graveyard.
They took my father out of his grave. They already had him out when I arrived.
In Asacualpa village, the mining company has a concession of 300 hectares. It's already resulted in transfer of several communities. But residents didn't know it included the cemetery.
They drew up this document, and out of the blue, it included the graveyard. Our community never agreed to them exploiting the cemetery.
The mining company, Minerales de Occidente, uses open-cast mining and extracts more than 1 billion ounces of gold a year. But the resistance from people who do not want to be moved is growing stronger.
I do not want to negotiate, not even with money. They came to find me to negotiate, but I said no, absolutely not. This is in the hands of our lawyers.
3 human rights organizations filed an appeal and blocked the removal of bodies to another cemetery, something that was already happening without the family's consent. Members of the organizations defending the community have received threats. They are the targets of a local campaign describing them as opponents of development.
Recently, the Interior Minister said that he would close 2 organizations because they were against development. I want to invite him to come here, where I am, to see the ecological disaster that the mining companies have caused here.
Even though the removal of houses is imminent, local residents keep protesting. They say they will not give up.
We are here because we do not accept the situation. We do not want money, houses. We do not want anything in exchange for our dead relatives.
The mineral company Minerales de Occidente has more than 300 similar concessions in Honduras. It is estimated that the company generates less than 3,000 jobs in the whole country.
The funeral for Botham Jean took place in his native St. Lucia on Monday. Jean's body was flown home over the weekend for the funeral. He was laid to rest at Chalk Cemetery. Botham was killed earlier this month in his Dallas home by a police officer. Calls for justice resonated throughout the funeral service.
The fact is that Botham lies here dead in this box. This is not fake news. There lies his body. The officer, the off-duty police officer, is alive and well. I will not plead any apology if my heart is in my face today. If St. Lucia's heart is in its face. St. Lucia is angry. People in the 4 corners of the earth are angry.
For those who choose to do evil, there is a day of reckoning. God will repay all the evil that is done to his children, because he said in his word, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." In the meantime, let us be good and patient. Let justice take its course, if there be any in this world. To those who continue to protest in his name for justice, we say thank you. But please, do it peacefully, for this is what Botham would want. Botham Shem Jean was not a silhouette. Botham Shem Jean, in his domain, posed no threat. In his apartment, they claim to have found some sort of cigarette. For those who have done and continue to perpetuate such evil, of this you will regret.
As the funeral was taking place, the Dallas Police Department said it had fired Amber Geiger, the police officer who shot Botham Jean. In a statement, it said that Geiger was dismissed after an internal investigation found the officer engaged in adverse conduct when she was charged with manslaughter. The firing comes after widespread calls for action against Geiger, who had been on administrative leave since the shooting. Meanwhile, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States is standing firmly in solidarity with the family of Botham Jean. In a statement, OECS Chairman St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves calls upon the U.S. to ensure justice. Gonsalves also tells the U.S. that our small size ranking in global affairs should not lead to false assumptions about the strength of our resolve and determination in the fight for justice. And on Monday, Trinidad and Tobago celebrated 42 years as a republic. As has become a new tradition, the country held its national awards ceremony. And for the first time this year, the event was presided over by its first female president, Justice Paula Mae Weeks. 50 persons were honored in various categories from culture, sport, religion, and national service. We'll take another short break now. Join us in a few for more news.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos.
tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along and find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. One man was killed and scores were injured by live ammunition and tear gas used by Israeli security forces on Palestinian protesters gathered along the Israeli-Gaza border on Monday. Several fishing boats carrying Palestinian flags participated in the protest just off the shore before being forced to head back to shore. Palestinians have been holding regular protests along the border since March as part of the Great March of Return. 136 protesters are reported to have been killed by Israeli fire since they began. And still in Palestine, the Israeli government has ordered the residents of the town of Khan al-Ahmar to leave their homes before the 1st of October. The Israeli forces said they will not only demolish the houses themselves if the villagers don't leave, but also make them pay for it. 180 inhabitants have decided to stay. Our correspondent in Cairo, Egypt, explains what this means for the Palestinians.
The spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, Yusuf al-Mahmoud, has assured that Israel's intent to demolish the Bedouin village in Jan al-Ahmar, east of Jerusalem, is an unacceptable threat. In a statement, the spokesperson said that this measure goes beyond international law and called for the urgent international action to stop Israeli occupation. Al-Mahmoud pointed out that demolition of the village undermines the possibility of creating a genuine state in Palestine because Israel intends to destroy the village to make a new Jewish settlement. This is a sensitive area due to its territorial continuity and the scope of the solution of two states. Villagers have assured that they would not leave the place and were willing to return to their homes despite the eventual demolition of the village, although international humanitarian law prohibits the demolition of Jan al-Ahmar and the illegal confiscation of property. Israeli forces continue the planned expansion, forcing the evictions of villagers. The deadline Israel has given to the Palestinians is October 1st, ensuring that if villagers do not meet the deadline set, the Israeli army will demolish the entire village.
Typhoon Trami is posing potential danger to Taiwan and Japan. The latest tropical cyclone in the West Pacific rapidly strengthened over the weekend, becoming Super Typhoon Trami on Monday. It is currently equal to a Category 4 hurricane, and it continues to intensify. Trami could start producing winds equal to a Category 5 hurricane by Tuesday. And finally, China is celebrating its Mid-Autumn Festival. Isiara Diaz, our correspondent in Beijing, explains this tradition and its importance to Asian culture.
The Mid-Autumn Festival is a celebration that began more than 3,000 years ago and takes place on the 15th day of the 8th month of the lunar calendar. Like every year, millions of people take advantage of the 3-day holiday and travel to their hometowns to celebrate together with their families.
For us, the holiday is very important. In traditional Chinese folklore, it is believed that the most important thing is that the family is united. As the Mid-Autumn Festival Party is a group activity, in our hearts we have the idea that it doesn't matter where you are or how busy you are, you always have to return to spend it with family.
The festival usually has a traditional lion and tiger dance. The origin of the festival is surrounded by mythical stories. One of them says it began during the dynasty of Emperor Yang more than 4,000 years ago, with people making sacrifices during the full moon.
It is not necessary to protect this festivity because the Mid-Autumn Party is automatically in the philosophy of life of the Chinese people. They will always remember these days. It's almost impossible to forget because of it is a party that is celebrated with family. You will always remember your dear family, especially those who work and live away from their homes. This day is also written in our literature, poetry and songs. It is no longer necessary for people to explain it. Everyone knows that they have to do and what they should buy.
Generally, the festival is celebrated with greater emphasis when the night falls, sharing outdoor banquets to celebrate the full moon. But the fundamental piece of the festival is this moon cake, a sweet cake generally rounded, filled with a lotus seed paste that can also contain the yolk of duck eggs, nuts, sesame seeds, or ham, among other ingredients. It's a moment for celebration, family, remembering ancestors, and with the help of red lanterns to thank good harvest and exchange gifts.
We thank Yasira for that report, and we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talis Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.
Telesur.